Hi, Alex. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Hey Nathan, how's it going? Happy to help. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Alex Zamora. I am a current engineer at NASA Johnson Space Center. I am currently, my official title is Electronics Engineer supporting the Information Resources Directorate, supporting imagery and multimedia for all things institution to International Space Station, and most recently and most notably, Gateway, Orion, as well as HLS, and all of the encompassing Artemis programs.
That's pretty amazing portfolio you got there.
Thanks.
Um, have you always been in space, or did you have a career before this?
Yeah, so I came from the utilities industry. I used to be an automations engineer supporting a utilities industry out in San Antonio, Texas. And I've always been a fan and lover of all things space related and sci-fi. And so once I realized that, working at NASA was an attainable job, I set my mind to try my best to get a job. And Lord behold, I landed one in 2018. So.
That's awesome. I have a similar story. I was in computers for 25 years and then saw an entry level position working in the flight control, and I decided to try it and worked out for me too. So that was kind of
Awesome.
cool. But do you remember what got you excited about space? I mean, what made you interested in going to NASA to begin with?
Sure. Yeah. So, well, when I was a little kid, I was that stereotypical kid of I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. I mentioned I love sci-fi, different things like that. So I loved, I knew every single line and every single, I could relive the movie in my head of all the Star Wars movies, from the prequels to the original trilogy in VHS. So I would watch those pretty extensively. And, I'm kind of a PBS kid. I grew up watching, PBS on TV. We didn't have cable growing up, and so I really, loved sort of that knowledge that all of that brought, and all of the curiosity and wonder that all of the sci-fi and the movies brought. So that's kind of what got me into it.
Did you have like family that was also interested, or I mean, how that
Uh,
worked?
so my family's always been super supportive. Growing up, I didn't have any family that were engineers or scientists. My dad, growing up, he was an accountant, and he did work on computers back in the day. Although, if you ask him today, he would say didn't do computer work. So he developed a point of sale system for a restaurant as an accountant. And my mom also she owns different restaurants. So I grew up in sort of the service industry, but just sort of always wanted to aspire to be something else, something totally different.
Yeah, and those point of sale systems for restaurants are really can be complicated. You know, splitting tabs and managing tips and a whole inventory of menus that change all the time.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Um, well, you must have known pretty much as soon as it was announced that we're going back to the moon.
Absolutely, yeah. So when the Artemis program was announced, I was working under the International Space Station program. So I wasn't too closely related to that, especially being on the contracting side. I was supporting the console that you support now. So I was a console called Phoenix, which is a pretty long-winded acronym, and I probably couldn't recite it to you from memory, but we worked out in the mission evaluation room, the MER, supporting the Spartan flight controller in the front, FICR-1. And I remember being in Building 30 when they announced the title of the Artemis program. But I do remember pretty vaguely, albeit in the past, when they had the Constellation program, which was retired and then sort of reintroduced as Orion. And I remember the first Orion mission on the ULA rocket. That was pretty interesting. So I had always known we were going to go back, but I was just really happy to know the name of the mission being Artemis, and that we had a pretty firm timeline. So that was pretty exciting.
Um, Would it surprise you that most of the random people I talk to at Starbucks or on the street or at the airports, only about 20% of them know that we're going back to the moon?
It doesn't surprise me, no, because I've run into that. I have a pretty extensive personal relationship with that. So, my friends and family, a lot of them don't know. So it sort of takes me to sort of be that messenger and get that information out to them. So yeah, it's a little sad, to be honest. But I do know that once we do get there, that'll be the biggest sort of advertisement of it, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people follow like Bob and Doug going on the Falcon 9 Crew Dragon flight because it was actually happening and they could see it and tune into it. It wasn't something that might be happening in a few years. Uh,
exactly.
so whenever you tell people that we're going back to the moon, what are some of the reactions you get?
They're mostly positive. I don't think I've ever received a negative comment about it. A lot of folks are really excited. A lot of my I have several younger nieces, and they are all inquisitive and curious about why we're going to go back to the moon and what we're going to do, and sort of. I've had one of my niece in the past ask me, what's the point? We've already been there. And so I always say it's to continue our learning process. We were only up there for since Apollo 11 through Apollo 17, I believe. So there's a lot more that we can do that we didn't do. Plus, with the help of our robot friends, right? I know we're sending some different lunar rovers, namely the latest one. I believe it's called Viper, that we're sending up there. So that's going to be really cool to sort of have a parallel to how the Apollo and I believe it was the Sojourner program and those probes were like.
Yeah, that will be awesome. The first year's worth of interviews I did, I put on a micro SD card and bought a moon box from Astrobotics, which should be sending it to the moon as soon as they get those engines from Blue Origin for their new Vulcan rocket.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Um, so yeah, I've heard that same kind of thought about we've been to the moon, why are we going back? And we already done that before. And I like to tell people, well, people who go to Disney often go back too, So it's like, and plus, it's once you've been to one beach, I guess you shouldn't go to any more either.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm guilty of doing that as well.
um, well, I get if you look out into the future of humanity, where do you see us in 200 years?
In 200 years. That's an interesting question. It's sort of humbling to look back and sort of think, 200 years ago, right? Where we were then to where we are now. It's humbling in the sense of, do you think folks back then would have thought that, we could have, landed on the moon or left the planet? I think the answer is yes, right? I think, for folks to be inspired and to really be excited about the future, I think these things of, that are, sort of fantasy become reality. And so I'm really hoping in 200 years that, we can at least have a permanent presence, either on the surface of the moon or in orbit of the moon, with either have already landed to some degree with humans on Mars and or the orbit of Mars. So, SpaceX is really big on the whole marketing making the human species multiplanetary, and I'm 100% on board. I think that's where technology the technology available today can help us get there. And I think it's something that really makes me excited. And I think within my lifetime, within our lifetime, I think we can get to the moon and or Mars. And so 200 years from now, I would hope we would have some sort of permanent presence on the moon, and maybe even building that permanent presence on a different planet, whether that be Mars or maybe even beyond.
If you could, would you take a trip to space?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think I wouldn't think twice about it.
How far would you consider going? One of these suborbital trips to orbit to the International Space Station, to the moon, or immigrate to Mars?
Well, I guess it depends on where I am in life. If you were to ask me right now, a one-way trip would be sort of out of the question. I think in most cases, a one-way trip would be out of the question. But definitely, going to the International Space Station would be, something mind-blowing. I worked on the International Space Station for about 3.5 years. So just to see it in person, be able to touch it would really be a, lifelong fulfillment of that work that I did. But maybe in the future, maybe even travel to the Gateway. That would be pretty cool. I don't know what that would be like or will be like. But I imagine it's going to be something that pretty closely resembles the International Space Station. So if we can go and come back to the Gateway, or maybe to some sort of outpost out in Mars, that'd be really cool as well.
So we're in the 2020s. I asked you about where do you see humanity in 200 years from now? I would like to kind of turn that around and look at it from the opposite perspective. So imagine this. You are one of your descendants, immigrates to Mars. It's like 5, 6, 7, 8 generations from now. And your great, 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 great granddaughter, however many greats it is, has lived on Mars her entire life. She's now in high school doing a history project on the 2020s. So she's 200 years in the future looking back at us now.
Yeah.
What do you hope she could write about this decade?
I would hope that somebody in the future would look back and think that we had pure intentions, that we tried to make the right decisions with integrity and with a pure heart, and made these scientific explorational milestones possible with only those good intentions of just making life multiplanetary, and not so for like greed or any other of those types of things.
I hope she can write that. It sounds well, Alex. I really appreciate your time. I see this as a time capsule for that futuristic high schooler doing that history project. So, is there anything that you would like to add that maybe we didn't talk about?
No, I think we covered everything. It's pretty. Those are really good questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Alex. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll run into each other someday at JSC.
Yeah, hopefully. Are you in building 4?
Yes, 4
Okay.
North,
Okay.
2nd floor.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I go to building 4. I think it's floor 5. I think. I haven't been there I haven't been there many times, but
4 South, the 6-story building.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me see.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording real quick.
Sure. Yeah.